Let's kind of begin where we left off last night. As we speak, the NATO leaders are meeting in the Netherlands at The Hague. The images that we have seen over the past couple of hours have been interesting, including, of course, the President of the United States meeting a bunch of other world leaders. Those paying absolute attention have noticed that the Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, is wearing a suit today at the NATO meeting. Now, that would be fascinating to know why. Of course, we all know what happened last time they saw each other face to face. The President seems to have woken up in a better mood than he was at times yesterday on just apparently a couple of hours' sleep. The day begins in the beautiful Netherlands. The King and Queen are beautiful and spectacular people. Our breakfast meeting was great. Now we're off to the very important NATO meetings. The US will be very well represented. Now, I know it's the 428th time, and I know that polite society does not like it. But I absolutely loved, that Trump ripped in the way that he did yesterday. Because remember, the whole point of what he is trying to do is to draw a line under the 12 most recent days of conflict, not to decide an overall winner when it comes to the Middle East and the rights and wrongs, just to say, OK, we've all made our point, stop. And when they were refusing to do so, I just love that the President of the United States did not send a message, a smoke signal. You did not have to read the tea leaves. Instead, he spray painted it on the White House walls.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Bang, boom, boom. Now, it might just be because I am a cashed up bogan, but the reality is that a lot of people, if not, dare I say most, swear. Do we expect a little better in our public officials? Sure. But every now and then, are you allowed to show a certain level of frustration? And yeah, sometimes even go there. Of course. But what I love is the giant gulf between the people who are making TV and radio shows and the people who are watching them, who either cheered or booed, but may well have said the same language back to the screens. Watch everyone tiptoe around the F-bomb today.
Key US weapon, the F-bomb, a foul-mouthed tirade.
A furious Donald Trump has left the world stunned.
Donald Trump delivered a furious tirade punctuated with an expletive.
Oh, expletive. Foul-mouthed. How dare you? I get it. Is this the most presidential of language you have ever seen in your life? No. But sometimes I love that we pretend that our society is still sort of playing by the everyone wears hats and suits when they go to the city rules of the 1950s. Now, it does not mean that I expect all bulletins all the time to be nothing but F-bombs and creative ways of swearing. Certainly, there have been plenty of times in my career over 15 years that I've got probably a little bit too sweary, a little bit too casual. I know for some people, swearing is down market. It might seem a little dumb at times. And you know what? You're probably right. But I do find some of the collective pearl clutching from a media that is more than happy to shove bile and garbage down the throats of people over generations, being the same people going, won't someone think about the children? Now, while all of that was happening, and I'm going to have a bit to say about social media, there were some people who had a little bit of fun with it. Again, if you're the type of person who is deeply offended by the swearing of the president, I apologise. But again, I don't want him to be doing it all day, every day. I like that there's these little moments that sometimes just break out and normal people who don't pay attention to the news as deeply as we do go, how good or bad was what the president did last night? And again, it didn't hurt a single human being. But it did produce fun like this. Like everything on the internet is seemingly being turned into babies, so why not the news?
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
You can hate or like Trump all you want. I don't care if you hate him, you love him, or like him, but y'all can't lie. That man is funny. This man cussed on national television.
You understand that?
Oh, I know there'll be how could he? Well, they're all going to pretend they don't swear in their own life. Again, if you are somebody who does not use this language, I apologise for making fun. But if you are a person who does use this language, who has used this language before but then goes on television, a foul-mouthed behaviour of a president. welcome to 2025, okay? There's so much fakery and puffery in and around the media. My thing is just to try to be as normal as possible. And sometimes that is going to be a little swear word. Hopefully not all of the sentence, and hopefully many fewer than often roll through my little head. But that's just my thoughts. No swearing today at the NATO conference. Instead, the thing that was around yesterday, he's doubled down on again today, which is the leaking of intel information that apparently the hit on Iran was not as big as he had suggested. So he's going after those who are saying that it wasn't the obliteration of the nuclear campaign in Iran.
You had some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick.
Imagine if a real politician, like a serious, did that here. Oh, the clutch of the pearls. But what, the darkness dies in democracy. Oh, whatever. Now, let's talk about the National Press Club, the guardians of our democracy. All, of course, pushing it as left as they can all day, every day. Now, we know this is a home game for the left. Why? Because it's in Canberra, right? It's full of the Canberra Columbos. It's full of the people who turn every little scandal into the Liberal Party about something that, you know, should be the end of the party, the end of the right of Australian politics, while looking the way at all sorts of things that the Labor Party's done. And, of course, Sussan Ley was there today, and Sussan Ley, I should say, was at the Press Club, of course, the new Liberal leader. But before she'd even turned up, a couple of days before she had turned up, already the press was saying what they demanded from her speech. Now, they never do this for Anthony Albanese. Why? Because it's a home game. But Michelle Grattan, and she can pop up in lots of different places, but she says here that there are 5 questions that she needed to answer. Now, of course, when I ask 5 questions of an opposition leader, that's crazy to stuff. When Chris Kenny does it, that's the wildness of Sky News Primetime. But if you're Michelle Grattan, you can have 5 questions that need to be answered. The 5 questions that she set as the rules for the press conference and the appearance today is, how is she going to thread the needle between the two sides of the Liberal Party? How and when will she deal with the Coalition's commitment to net zero? Won't it be near impossible for the Liberals to get a respectable proportion of women in the House of Representatives team without quotas? Lee says that she wants to run a constructive opposition. So how constructive in the tax debate that Treasurer Jim Chalmers launched this week? How will it be constructive in that debate? How active will Lee be in trying to drive improvements in the appalling Liberal Party state organisations, especially in New South Wales and in Victoria? Now, reality is that the same series of questions were never set as the bar for when Bill Shorten was giving his first speeches as the Labor leader trying to pick up after 2013. And yes, there was a devastating, deep, difficult loss for the Coalition. No one's hiding it, no one's pushing it around. But the idea that all questions were going to be answered in the first major appearance of a person weeks, effectively, after an election might be setting the bar deliberately so high that there's no way that any politician, left, right or centre, let alone Liberal left, right or centre, would be able to clear it. And again, here were some of the questions from those who were gathering to pepper up the new alternative Prime Minister.
The opposition in the last term was characterised by being quite muscular in its opposition, even to cost of living relief in the Parliament, and at times seemed like just reflexively said no and then found a justification for doing it later. I'm wondering if you accept that now as a mistake.
The 2022 review published by Jane Hume and Brian Longman explicitly stated a reason for the decline in the vote is because of women. You yourself, after this review, was in the second most senior position as Deputy Opposition Leader. How can you guarantee that this review will actually be listened to?
Are you making yourselves more unelectable for the sake of unity within the Coalition?
The 1983 election, which was probably the Coalition's worst result bar the May election. 40 years later almost, you're almost in the exact same position, if not worse. Do you think there is truly a way to stop what is emerging as a long-term pattern of regression?
Don't you like the people whose professional job it is to talk about politics, who are in the upper echelons in the Canberra Press Gallery, that they are able to go to the National Press Club and ask questions of the opposition leader, but don't quite know all of the names of the people of whom they are asking the questions about? Hello, Brian, I hope that you're watching. But fair income, really? Now, again, sometimes I am the person who can be quite guilty of mispronouncing certain words, but I don't set myself up as somebody who's ready to take the challenge directly to the face of our political leaders. But what I actually want to show you here is what was in her speech. Because the reality of any opposition leader is that the argument is always, well, no one knows who you are. So, yes, this was a nationally televised speech, but it's in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, so it's not like millions of people are watching. But if you do get the chance and you do get the time, go and read it or go and watch the full-length video of it, because let's start to learn who this person is. Again, if they make bad decisions, I'll be the first one to jump up and down. But rather than trying to somehow make sure that this never gets out of first gear, let's just see what she had to say. And she, again, is talking about her biography. And in the reality of modern Australian politics, yes, what you believe in is the most important thing. But who you are and what you experience seems to be the way of trying to connect with a whole collection of people who are either forced to vote by our system or people who may well have given up on you because they consider the bio to be more important than any of the ideas. Here's part of the alternative Prime Minister's pitch today. It'll take 3 years. Who knows where it will end, most likely. Well and truly short of government, but still, who is the Leader of the Opposition? Well, a woman who had life experience like this.
Aspiration is the thread that connects every single part of Australian society. Aspiration is the foundation of the Australian promise that if you work hard, play by the rules, do your best for your kids and contribute to your community, you will be able to build a better life for yourself and your family. That promise feels rather distant for many Australians today. Cost of living is rising, wages are stagnant, and home ownership is out of reach. Australians work hard, but too often they feel like they're running harder just to stand still. For too many Australians, it's a promise that seems almost unachievable. The Liberal Party must restore that promise to empower Australians to make decisions that are right for them, to reward effort, not punish success, to ensure that government backs its citizens, not burdens them. That is the Australia I believe in.
First principles. First principles. What a wonderful way to introduce yourself to say this is what the first principle is. And the reality is, in politics, you have to say it over and over again until you're sick of it, and that's when people start to listen. So you're going to hear this bio, you're going to hear these values over and over again. Again, I'm in a benefit of the doubt position when it comes to this Leader of the Opposition. Again, when she talks about a personal experience, it is unusual for many politicians to talk about things like this. But if you've got a story that is ever so slightly different than the cookie cutter of everyone else, why not tell it?
My journey here is not one of privilege. It's a story of work, struggle, persistence, and belief in the country that gave me and my family a chance. I was born in Nigeria to British parents. They lived busy lives. The first lesson they instilled in me growing up was that your job was about more than just clocking on and clocking off. It was about having a vocation, something that made the world a better place or made a difference in society.
Exactly. And again, for many working women, there is a story that is one where what blokes sometimes take for granted, or certainly people who were young when they went to things like university may well not understand was complicated, is the experience of once you get to a moment in your life where you realise, I've got to reskill, I've got to go back to TAFE, I've got to go back to uni, but I'm not doing it as a 21-year-old, I'm doing it as a person who's on their way or in and around their 30s. Again, I thought this was a good insight into beginning to get to know the person that millions of people are hoping is going to be able to take the fight up to elbow.
Balancing the family budget was becoming too hard, so I made a decision that many mums have made before and since: get new skills and bring in extra income. So, as I raised my own family, I went to university for the first time, aged 30. I still remember the day I walked in to enrol in a Bachelor of Economics at Electoral University in Wodonga. I kept thinking, can I really do this? I got out of the battered farm ute, baby in a capsule, and I felt so out of place. I was a different generation from these students who didn't seem to have a care in the world. I felt like an outsider. I remember being suffocated by self-doubt. There I stood, the mature age student with a crying baby, convinced that I did not belong here.
And then to the fundamental issue, which of course is, how does the Liberal Party get itself to a place where more women are able to get elected to Parliament and get the opportunity, like many people have before, to be able to rise up and sometimes down and then up and then sometimes sideways and then down and then way up in the ranks? Well, again, she took that head on because, of course, how many of the questions were going to be about that? Hence why you have to talk about it in your speech.
Our party must pre-select more women in winnable seats so that we see more Liberal women in federal parliament. Now, I'm agnostic on specific methods to make it happen, but I am a zealot that it actually does happen. Current approaches have clearly not worked, so I'm open to any approach that will. If some state divisions choose to implement quotas, that's fine. If others don't, that's also fine. But what is not fine is not having enough women.
Now, I made the point straight after the election, and I'm not going to wallow on this for the next 3 years. It's just I'm a person who can often try to interpret things, not just about what people believe in. And of course, that is the most important thing. But increasingly, for an awful lot of people, it is again about the bio. And the reality is that when you have a look at the electoral roll and you have a look at the 30 seats that the coalition has lost in the last 2 elections, guess what 28 of them have in common? That there are more female voters on the rolls than there are male voters. Now, this does not automatically mean all women go one way or the other. I'm not suggesting that. But if you're trying to have candidates that look like the electorate in order to build a bridge, well, guess what? In the seats where there are more female voters than there are male voters, guess what? Now, this has been something that political parties have done for a long period of time when it comes to certain things, more often than not, things like ethnicity, but perhaps gender is an issue that clearly needs to be dealt with here. And when I say more female voters than men, I don't mean like 100 more. I mean like enough to decide an election more. Like some of the seats that have changed hands in the past couple of elections. These are all over the country, by the way. In Petrie, which is a seat that until this election was a bellwether seat, it's got 7,000 more female voters than males. In Boothby in South Australia, where our mate Nicole Flitt was running, there was 6,000 more female voters. In Kooyong, there's almost 6,000 more female voters. In Robertson in New South Wales, there's almost 5,000, and so on and so on and so on, for 28 different seats. So is it everything? No. Is it nothing? No. Is it something? Obviously. Now, speaking of people voting in elections, here's where I'm going to dance right on the razor blade for you, but I'll do it anyway. Now, the reality is that, yes, politics changes, and it changes with its technology and it changes with its communities, and depending on whether you think that the world is getting smarter because everyone's going to university or the world is getting dumber because everyone goes to university, the reality is that something is changing in and around the way that our politics is discussed and is decided. Now, whether it is left-right, whether it is gender, whether it is your bio, whether it is socio-economic, all of those different things, again, is it something? Yeah. Is it everything? No. Is it nothing? No. But for those of us who have grown up in the era when newspapers, radio and television was basically the major triangle of how people get their information, and that continues to be the number one source, we know that the internet, with millions of people looking at established news brands there. But then there's, of course, the whole world of social media. And am I breaking anything to anyone that lots of people are on social media? No. But with every single election, there are people who are paying attention to the triangle of established media, which, let's be honest, can go all the way from the most granular, the most interested in the detail, all the way through to, yeah, sometimes a mile wide and an inch deep, but still, generally speaking, there's a little bit of detail in and around the debates. What is the difference between Team Red and Team Blue? Well, it's this idea, it's this idea, it's this idea. Why has Team Blue made a mistake? Well, because they did this and this and this. But increasingly, a massive chunk of the way that political parties market themselves to either people who aren't paying too much attention to the detail, or they just want to push you towards, I like that person, I don't like that person. Increasingly, the amount of garbage that parades as political information is worth having a look at. Now, I've been meaning to do this for the many, many weeks since the federal election, and I know there's a whole collection of people who are the content creators who are appealing to their audiences that will be using this analysis as some way of flaming my good self or the station of which I work. But let's all understand the spirit in which this conversation is happening, which is just being realistic and trying to understand what the hell's going on right now. Not because one team won and one team lost, but about how people inform themselves. And the reality is that because of mobile phones, because of the internet, we have more information available to us than ever before. Literally, every single report that is released by the Auditor General, by the Corruption Commission, by the Productivity Commission, by the Parliamentary Library, is freely available within an hour of it being released to the media. You, if you want to, who would, but still, you can read the federal budget if you want. And I get it that much of the role at times of the media is to try to do all of that for you, surmise key points, tell you what's going on. But increasingly, the political conversation is not even to get into the detail. Is this a sign of a joint that's getting dumber or busier, or this is a special way of building a new bridge to a new generation? But I resent the implication that the next generation is somehow dumber than... It's not true, right? But you see, if we can get the conversation as narrow as possible, the political parties think, then it's the easiest for them to be able to pull you in their direction. Like, this was a legit internet posting by the Labor Party in Western Australia. Now, if you think that sometimes I get a little too caught up in the detail, this would be the exact opposite and is just ooga booga as a political message. Written, spoken and authorised is at the end of that clip, like an official thing. Written, spoken and authorised, Labor Party, Perth. Another example of this, because you know, there's so much bullying and social media, and there's so much evil things that are said about body types, and you're not supposed to comment on those body types, unless, of course, you just want to go and have a go at your political opponent, and then you can do this. Okay. And then if you win because people saw that stuff and they agree with you that that candidate's bad, then you post lots of videos as if you are going off to school camp rather than setting up your office to become a federal MP to write the laws of this country.
Hell yeah, hey DJ, bring that back. When I move, you move. Just like that. When I move, you move. Just like that. When I move, you move. Just like that.
And then there's the Tasmanian election playing out right now. Now, remember, the only reason this election is happening is because the Labor Party got together with the Greens to be able to disrupt the Parliament to force an early election. Yet this is the rubbish being fed to voters in Tasmania who may well only be getting it while scrolling through Labubu videos.
It's time to go!
Or you could just pretend that you've been endorsed by the characters of Family Guy. And I would bet a substantial bet that nobody at Disney is aware that their characters are being used in political ads with their voices being faked by AI. This, again, is an official Labor post on the internet.
I heard some Liberals talking about selling off Aurora Energy. Would that make the service better?
No, Stewie, that is Liberal slop. In April, the Liberal Premier said he believes in selling off public assets such as Aurora Energy.
Sorry? Copyright? Anyone, anywhere? Then, of course, there is this scenario where in Queensland today, the federal budget was the Queensland budget was released yesterday, and Queensland MPs, a giant chunk of Labor MPs, decided not even to turn up to Parliament today. their job is, of course, to be elected to go to Parliament. But no, they weren't anywhere near Parliament. Instead, one of the, if not key complaints the Labor Party has about the state budget is nothing in the state budget. No decisions in the state budget, just the colour of the cover of the book called the budget.
Why is our state budget blue? We're supposed to be maroon. Why is the LNP trying to rebrand the whole of Queensland as blue in state of origin season? Blue budget. Ew.
I promise we can do better than this. Now, again, you've got to appeal to all people everywhere, but if our politics has become this stupid, then is anyone surprised that the people who are willing to do anything and go as deep into the gutter or as shallow into the pool as possible are the ones who will win every single time?